Good afternoon again. I am delighted to be the moderator of what is looking to be a very promising and interesting panel today on the theme Supporting Tools to Early Stage Social Businesses and Impact Startups in the Swiss and International Ecosystems. The focus is, of course, sustainable agriculture, sustainable food, and human rights. It is my pleasure to introduce the panelists, who are all experts and professionals in their respective fields. I will start with Mr. Aymeric Jung. He was in charge of investor relations and advisory at Quadia, a Swiss impact investing company founded in 2010 in Geneva, where he developed an impact management methodology based on regenerative economy principles. His journey in sustainable food and agriculture began in 2007. He has since held board positions at Slow Food Switzerland, Terre de Liens, excuse my French, in France, and the Lant Foundations in Belgium, as well as numerous food companies. As an investor, he launched Nourrir Terre, an investment program supporting local sustainable food systems, and the Regenero Impact Fund, investing in organic food producers, processors, or distributors with a focus on zero waste. He has 20 years' experience in investment banking to support investors and entrepreneurs by structuring innovative financing solutions for small and medium-sized companies. He holds a master's in business management and a master in international finance, and he has held key positions such as head of fund structuring and product specialist and similars for multiple companies like Lehman Brothers, Nomura, Credit Suisse, and Credit Lyonnais. Additionally, he contributed to the magazine Bilan with a blog on impact investing. Next, we have Dr. Tanja Collavo. She is the course director of the Masters in Sustainability Leadership and for the postgraduate certificate and diploma in sustainable business at the Cambridge Institute for Sustainability Leadership, University of Cambridge. She has taught and tutored courses in social entrepreneurship, strategy, general management, and has knowledge of design and systems thinking as processes to develop sustainable solutions to complex social and environmental issues. Tanja has supported collaborations between researchers and social enterprises and also worked in various positions in consulting and for multinational corporations. In 2022, Tanja published the textbook Foundations of Social Entrepreneurship: Theory, Practical Tools, and Skills, the core textbook for the online course on social entrepreneurship at the University of Oxford. Mr. Sebastiano Cossia Castiglioni. He is an Italian award-winning entrepreneur, investor, activist, and advisor to businesses and governments around the world. An impassioned vegan and animal rights activist, Sebastiano is a global authority on plant-based businesses and investments, dedicated to disrupting the current food system and to removing animals from the supply chain entirely. He founded the venture capital firm Vegan Capital, and is also a partner in Blue Horizon, a Swiss-based investment company. Sebastiano serves as the advisory board on the advisory board of Sea Shepherd and other organizations that defend animal rights at global level. He is the owner and chair of the biodynamic and vegan winery Querciabella, based in Tuscany, that won many awards, including Best Wine of Italy in 2004. He also was economic advisor to Italian Prime Minister Matteo Renzi from 2014 to 2016. And last but not least, Mr. Freddy Hunziker. He was a professional mountain biker in the downhill category. He found that a plant-based diet was the key to rapid recovery after a serious crash. But he missed the cheese. So he began experimenting with various nuts and seeds in his farmhouse kitchen in the Bernese Oberland, learning the craft of cheese making and skillfully combining traditional fermentation and maturing techniques with innovative plant-based organic ingredients. Freddy launched the award-winning alternative to Camembert in 2016, kickstarting his entrepreneurial career. Freddy received the Swiss Economic Award in 2019 and was nominated for the Forbes 30 Under 30 in 2021. He is the co-founder and CEO of the fossil-free startup New Roots, which produces plant-based cheese and dairy products and currently employs 35 people. And my name is Samantha Caccamo. I'm the moderator of this panel. I'm the CEO of Social Business Earth, based here in Lugano, in this very building, a social enterprise that supports and facilitates the development of impact startups and sustainable business models through consulting, training, and the organization of events with the mission to create equal opportunities for all and alleviate poverty. Now, I'm going to start with the first question, and it's a question to all of you. We are currently witnessing a revolution in the agri-food industry, as many startups are making innovative products to address climate change, food scarcity, eliminate intensive animal farming, etc. However, producing organic food using local raw materials, recycling byproduct, reducing waste, lowering CO2 emissions, are often expensive choices that don't always agree with profitability. As a result, there is often a trade-off, and an entrepreneur has to make decisions on the feasibility of being more financially sustainable or more socially and environmentally conscious. Is there a recipe for impact startups that operate in the agri-food business to be environmentally, socially, and financially sustainable? What are the lessons learned in your journey and the good practices that you would like to share today with the startup founders? I will break the ice by asking Sebastiano to answer first. Then whoever wants to go next.
And well, I will answer your question in a provocative manner, because there are many formulas that can be used. I don't necessarily agree that producing sustainably is more expensive. It can be less expensive than producing in an unsustainable way, but that's complex. There are so many factors going into what makes an enterprise feasible and profitable. But I would say that in my experience, having invested now in almost 100 companies, mostly in the food sector, I would emphasize quality above all. That is what wins. And Freddy here is the demonstration of that. Their products are in over 2,000 stores nowadays, and expanding as we go. And their winning factor, apart from everything, and of course the care with which they're produced and the sustainability and the ethical principles and so forth, is that they are unbeatable from the quality perspective in taste, flavor, and the way they are received by consumers. So if I look at all the companies I have invested in, and I was one of the early investors in Beyond Meat, for instance, and I've seen so many, the winners are the ones that concentrated on quality and flavor. First of all, you cannot possibly replace traditional products with sustainable products unless you win quality-wise. That's how you win the consumers. Then there are, of course, many other layers of complications. The fact that most distribution channels are very difficult to access, that large corporations, of course, have their way to lobby into larger distribution and taking over channels because they pay distribution channels, and startup companies have a difficult time doing that. But if you want to ask me what the secret formula is, make a product that is so much better than your competition, then you'll win. And Freddy here is the living demonstration of how that takes you to the best results.
And also from, I would add from a nutrition perspective, the new roots are, high in protein and compared to,
Yes.
let's say...
Well, their products are amazing in that respect as well. But consumers, unfortunately, are not very aware of nutritional value. They mostly eat bad, horrible industrial products.
Yeah.
So that's not, I wouldn't consider that a winning factor. You say this is the best product from the nutritional standpoint, it's not going to fly off the shelves.
Okay.
But something that tastes phenomenal and that replaces another product that is less sustainably produced and in a successful way from the flavor standpoint, that's I would say the #1 winning factor.
Okay, thank you very much,
Thank
Sebastiano. Does anyone else want to contribute? Aymeric.
If I can answer first, because unfortunately I disagree with what you just explained. So that's why it's a panel. First of all, I would put my slow food experience for 10 years as national treasurer for Slow Food Switzerland. So don't think I'm against good food and quality food, because I deeply believe in slow food and quality food. But I would say, as an investor, as a consumer for the last 15 years, I was a witness of some changes, and some changes I don't like, because today I can tell you, unfortunately, that I don't believe anymore in the consumers for buying quality food. I mean by this that between 2010 and 2020, yes, we had more and more well-informed consumers going to organic food, to local food, for health reasons, for environmental reasons. Then with the lockdown and the health crisis we had, it was quite good as well, because people cooked more at home, and it was still a good trend for organic business and good food and quality business. But after the lockdown, more and more people went to leisure and pleasure first as a priority. And after 2021, all the organic business and quality food business I was invested in suffer a lot. And more for the last 2 years with the Ukraine and the inflation, because now the consumer is just going to very cheap food, and the food expenses became just the variable to adjust to be sure you can spend money to other places. And from slow food, I have one quote that is: once you spend more time and more money on your mobile phone than cooking, unfortunately, it's done. So that's what I can see here, and of course I trust that the food system is our culture. The food system must sustain sovereignty, but it's not the case, unfortunately. So, has giving some clue to be successful as a business and a good quality and good food business. This time I agree with you, quality first, of course. So be sure that the convinced consumers like your product and will agree to pay the price. But my experience is more than 30%, not be more expensive than 30%. And even if producing sustainable can be cheaper, most of the time it's more expensive for the consumer at the market, at the retailer. So 30% should be the limit. And now, what I believe, and it was not the case before, as a food company startup, once you have this convinced consumer, has a proof of concept, just go to strong partnerships. Just go to your value chain and find partnerships to make your fixed cost lower. And as an example, I will quote Bindi. I'm an investor in Bindi. They concentrate on brand, research and development, and everything about sales, they go through partnerships and big retailers.
Thank you very much, Aymeric. Does anyone else want to contribute to this question?
Yeah,
Yes,
I would
Freddy,
like
please.
to. You addressed sustainability. I think that everything has always a price. You cannot do good products at the same time and, for example, burn gas and oil, which has a tremendous price on the planet, on the health in general of society. So I think it's very important to not do any shortcuts along the whole value chain. As said, you cannot do good products and at the same time destroy the planet. And I think it's important that we make a conscious decision there, and we think about the whole value chain as a whole when we're producing food. Especially now here we're discussing food. And I think it's also important to take the risk to do things different and show other industry partners that it's possible to produce fossil-free. Maybe not the first year or the second year, but in the long run it can be even cheaper. But I mean, we need to develop ourselves, and I think everybody needs to take action, and that's therefore very crucial.
Thank you, Freddy, for your contribution. Tanja, would you like to comment?
I can add some final thoughts. It's interesting for me because I'm more of a generalist, obviously, because of the role that I have. And here we have all food experts on different fronts. And what's interesting from what they're saying to me is that it's what I hear from any social enterprise, really. So it doesn't matter if you are in food or in another industry as a social enterprise or a sustainable business. There's some key things that are important for your success, no matter what. And it's quality, it's partnerships with the value chain, because if you need to create a triple bottom line instead of a single bottom line, you need to find solutions where others see problems. A social entrepreneur that I met recently from Africa was telling me that the way he thinks about it is to oversolve. So even if you've got a key mission in mind, a key issue that you want to solve, you need to think about what other issues you need to be solving for other partners, for other members of your value chain, to bring them along and find this balance between high quality but also low cost, because all that we've heard so far, it's very, very true. One thing that I would add beyond kind of reflections that have already been shared is the approach of frugal innovation, which I think has a lot of potential. And basically, frugal innovation is about doing more with less. That's how we define it in academia. And it's the idea of going back to the basics. So what is the core need that you're trying to fulfill? And just go back to that. The perfect example is the fridges. So there's an entrepreneur in India that created a fridge out of clay, because the key need of a fridge is just to keep things cooler for longer to avoid waste. And doing it with clay instead of going for our technologies means that those fridges can function without electricity, which is not always stable in India, and similarly are cheap to produce and are cheap to buy for families who cannot afford traditional fridges. So it's this kind of approach that I think can help you a lot as you're trying to combine high quality and solutions with cost concerns, which are increasingly here with inflation and the economic crisis.
Okay, thank you very much, Tanja.
Samantha, if I may add a point,
please.
because I'm not sure where we disagree. Maybe I did not express. No. But what my point was, when I said quality, I meant taste and flavor, not necessarily the cost of ingredients. And rightly, you pointed to the fact that especially after COVID, consumers went back to looking for pleasure. And I think that is number one. I mean, I can have a product that is totally inexpensive or very expensive, complex, organic or not, but if the flavor is not right, it's not going to succeed. And what I've seen in the industry is that when people choose, they choose what they like, and what they like is not necessarily the best ingredient, but it's what gives them pleasure and happiness. So, and that, I don't know if we agree on that, but I think
of course I agree, but
point.
Unfortunately it's not the mass market, and we can discuss this with Feminish if you want.
Okay, very well. I'm going to now move to the second question, which is, again, a question to all of you. The agri-food business is strictly linked to human rights. We often hear stories of companies that exploit the workforce, especially the most vulnerable, such as migrants, people who live in poverty, etc. How important is it for you to have an inclusive team that promotes diversity, and do you think that there should be more regulations along the value chain to verify and ensure that the workforce receives an adequate salary above the minimum wage and good working conditions, especially in developing countries. Let's start with Freddy. I know that you have quite a diverse team.
Yeah, exactly. We at New Roots we have we're I think over 9 nations, from Argentina, South Africa, like all over the world, and I think that's a really great atmosphere and a great energy. I think the most valuable point is that the most important stakeholders are the people. I think you can only do good and great products and fulfill the mission if the people behind can connect the dots, understand the business. You know, there's full transparency on everything, on budgeting, on salaries. So I can talk about New Roots, but I know it's not the case in the world. I know that the most important stakeholders are mostly the shareholders, and we really want to change that. And I think it's always multifunctional, highly like individual people who will make the difference, and therefore it's very important that people can connect the dots where they work, feel safe, feel good about what they're doing, and I think that's a small part about changing the way we work also.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Does anyone else want to contribute? Why is it so important to have a diverse team, and does it need? Should it be regulated? Should the workforce be regulated in terms of, you know, there aren't enough governments that actually regulate the workforce. We see a lot of exploitation of refugees, of migrants, and so on. What's your take on this, Aymeric?
Of course, when you have regulation, and it's only when regulation is here that it enables people and business to push themselves to the right direction, of course, and unfortunately sometimes we need regulation. Then I want to believe in people, in business people able to change in their conscience and to change the way they work. So as an investors, my priority goes to company understanding and able to share the profit, the margin, the benefit where it's most needed. And in food business, I do think you really need to share beyond fair trade. You really have to share with producers and with farmers. And also the same question we just discussed before. Sometimes you can have a good product, an organic product, not so expensive or a lot more expensive, but the distributors is taking more margin because it's an organic product. So really be aware of how the company you are invested in or the product you are buying, how it shares the profit. It's very, very important.
Thank you very much. Tanja, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's what I hear all the time in sustainability. Without regulation, it's hard for the big businesses to really kick in. And regulation is the needed level playing field. But I think there's a lot that businesses who really want to be sustainable and social can actually do without regulation, especially because in a lot of these places where we see the most exploitation, regulation is not going to come. We're looking at places that have no institutions in a lot of ways, have weak governments, if not corrupted governments, so we can't really wait for regulation to kick in, and businesses have a lot of power to change the system because they've got the funds. And so I think what should be true for any sustainable business or social business is to be sustainable 360, and that involves paying fairly for their suppliers and employees, and at the same time redistributing profits to what's possible so that everyone can get a good livelihood. But what I think really works really well is actually investing in those partnerships with the value chain as well as with employees, so empowering them to get better quality products, better outputs from what they're producing. And this involves educating them offering them opportunities that otherwise they wouldn't have, access to knowledge, access to funds, for example, microcredit, microfinance. So there's a lot that can be done, and it can be done even in the absence of regulation, but it does require a lot of thinking through and investment from the side of the company, especially in partnerships, I believe.
Well, Tanja, I just think the issue is like that most companies or even most people don't really understand what sustainability actually means. You know, sustainability means, I would say, is integrity, is transparency, is trust, and only based on these pillars you can build on the actual sense. And I think you're not going to make a difference by just hiring sustainability managers, like a sustainability manager, as most of the business are doing. You know, I don't know, producing meat and hiring a sustainability manager and then telling like the world is okay, we are green, we're sustainable now. And I think that's not how the world works. And I think this world is still highly misunderstood. And I think this should change. And I think it will be individuals who will make this change. I don't think this can be regulated I don't think this will make the main difference. Yeah.
I completely agree, and I hope it didn't come across that that's not exactly what I was going for. I think we don't understand sustainability the way we should understand it. And I also think that, again, sustainability managers, to be honest, normally are there for the greenwashing or the communication stuff. They're not there because the company is sustainable, because if it was sustainable, they wouldn't need a sustainability manager. They would include sustainability in everything that they do, but it is still a niche. So we also need to find ways to work with these other companies and make them more sustainable or kick them out of the market. I think that's one of the things you're trying to do, right? But it's gonna take time. So I think there's place for both. There's place for being fully sustainable, but there's also place for educating and partnering and investing in others so that they can also try and transition. And regulation sometimes is the only way to mobilize some funds.
Thank you all. Thank you. I'm going to, Sebastiano, you're okay? You don't want to comment? Okay, I'm going to now move to the third question. And this is a question that's directed more towards Aymeric and Sebastiano, because we are going to talk a little bit about funding, and from funding from two different perspectives, the impact investors and the startups. And as impact investors, Sebastiano wears two hats today because he's an entrepreneur and he's also an impact investor. Could you delve a little bit into the main differences between investing in an impact startup directly as an angel investor and investing through a financial vehicle or fund? And from your experience, do you recommend one or the other? Let's start with whoever wants to go first.
Okay, thank you. I've done it both, as a business angel to small companies, local food system companies, and as a fund manager with Quadia, of fund Regenero based on regenerative economy, and also Regenero investing and co-investing with largest investment funds. So Regenero is an impact fund. So I would say first, as an investor, if you are an individual investor, startup, early stage investment is really time intensive. It takes a lot of time. When it's going well, you have perhaps quarterly meetings with the funders. When it's not going well, it's every day, every night. You have to discuss the changes in the strategy, in the funding, what the company needs. So you must have a good relationship with the funders. And that's life, that's business. Funders, they have to run the company. So it's always the last investors or the largest investors that become the best friend. And when you were the best friend at the beginning, you become a smallholder problem. So be careful with this. It's life in the business. And when you are acting and investing as a business angel, you like diversification. So perhaps you are passionate about the product, but you don't diversify your portfolio. And you take a risk to be diluted and to be just out of the company when more investors are coming. With a fund, Of course, you benefit from diversification. You have the professional team able to negotiate good shareholder agreement, able to do the follow-on when there is more funding needed. They can do the follow-on, and you can still be in the game. So I do think it's good to be with a fund. And also, when you are investing in a fund, you can ask for co-invest in specific investment or companies when you really like the company, but it requires larger investment. A good compromise, more and more, when we are discussing about impact, it's, I think, crowdfunding platforms, because crowdfunding platforms impact crowdfunding platforms. They can offer you diversification, and sometimes some crowdfunding platforms also act as a manager and to give you these professional services. So I would say it's a mix between what you can do as a risk and having the time and the partnership you can build.
Thank you, Aymeric. Sebastiano, please.
I absolutely agree with what Aymeric said generally, and it's quite interesting to look at this from the investor's perspective and also from the entrepreneur's perspective, which not always coincide. And as an investor, of course, you have to carefully choose what you invest in from many points of view. And in my experience in about 20 years of investing in the sector, what I've seen is that a lot of startups focus on many aspects, but not being financially viable, which is a mistake. And every enterprise, small startup or large, needs to focus on being viable and sustainable from the financial standpoint in the long term. This is something that you have to look for as an investor, of course, but especially as an entrepreneur. You need to think long term. So I've seen, as I'm sure you have, the entire spectrum, companies that raised enormous funds and wasted them in no time, and companies that were very conservative about the use of funds and grew slower, but in a more sustainable way. I would say if I were an entrepreneur or a startup looking for funding, there's one mistake that we've seen for a very long time that luckily now is correcting, and that was the overvaluation of companies. I started a company yesterday. I haven't sold anything, but my company is worth $1 billion. But that doesn't make sense, never made sense, but even less nowadays. The other thing is, if you want to win over investors, you have to have a long-term plan that makes sense, and you have to be especially keen on what Aymeric was saying, partnerships, because your product can be as good as you want, but if you cannot bring it to the consumers, it's worth nothing. And so that's a key aspect that I look for in companies, that no matter what the sector, I want to make sure that they know that the key aspect is to be able to sell your product to as many people as possible. Otherwise, it doesn't exist.
Thank you so much.
I have a question to you, Sebastian. Why do you think there was this mistake in this tremendous high valuation, and that actually a lot of VCs just followed despite having a proper controlling CFO in-house? How do you think, especially in companies that had, as you said, no revenue?
Well, I can tell you what my experience is. My business partner in one of the funds that we launched, but in other enterprises, is called Mireille Zaki, and she used to be one of the managers of ADIA, which is the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, and she used to manage $18 billion of investments. She was very conservative and very careful, and when we analyze companies, she drives them crazy, but she gets to the point and never accepted a valuation that did not make sense. A lot of investors we have seen, especially in the impact sector, over the past decade, have invested absurd amounts in companies that were overvalued, because they simply had not enough experience and not enough control over what they were doing. And I was earlier discussing with someone here the sector of vertical farming, for instance,
Yeah,
where
good point.
billions have been invested in companies that made no sense whatsoever. And the same has happened in the food sector in some companies that really did not have the right values and the right mechanism in place. But I would say it's mistakes on both sides. One is being an entrepreneur and thinking that your company is worth so much more just because you like it, and then being an investor and thinking that it's okay to invest at no matter what valuation because eventually it will work out, because it doesn't work out.
Yeah, and I think it's very bad for innovation, you know.
Yes.
I think people are not innovative anymore because they lack the fire if there's so much funding around. We saw that in many startups.
Yes.
I think that's a pity.
Yes.
Can I add something?
Of course.
There is also a small difference. Of course, I think in the food business, in any business, and also when you are looking for funding, everything is about the momentum and the pricing power you can have. On retail business, if you have a technology, or if you can little bit disrupt, or if you can produce cheaper, you keep your momentum and your pricing power. And when you are raising funds, it's the same. 5, 6, 7 years ago, any company, vertical farming, plant-based company, they have a lot of investors. They want to go in, and you can be strong on your valuation. And also, having a high valuation gives you, as a funder, the possibility not to be too diluted. You just receive millions for 5 or 10% of your company. Something which is not very fair from investors. If you have deep pocket, you know that you can pay a high price, but you have the deep pocket. So if the company is not going well, you don't have any more the pricing power, you are short of cash. And when you are short of cash, with just a little bit money, you can take the control of the company. So it's really this kind of business game I don't like anymore, because I like when you can trust and have a partnership. And one kind of funding I developed and we developed at Quadia, it's index debt, because you don't negotiate. It's not the stronger who can decide what is the interest rate or what is the price of the company. The example of the index debt, it's quite hybrid. It's you fix a premium price. For example, 25% will be the cost of funding for the next 5 or 6 years. It's not dilutive, or you can have some clauses, but the cost of funding is 25% for the 6 years. And you have an indexed redemption linked to sales or any KPI you want in the company. And if the company is going well, the company will redeem in a shorter time. So it means you will be able to do your 25% as an investors, not in 5 years, but just in 2 years or in 3 years. So you fix the cost, there is not strong negotiation, and as an investors, you are doing well when the company is doing well.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And another instrument is convertibles that work more or less the same way, because the sooner the company achieves a higher value and financing, the sooner there will be a conversion into shares. But yes.
So it seems that convertibles are the option that you both recommend, or do you recommend, because I see a lot of startups that often are quick in giving away shares, to investors, and then they lose control of their company, as you rightly mentioned, Aymeric, just a while ago. So do you have a recommendation whether for startups, to receive investment as equity or debt, or convertibles?
So debt or equity, it will be the same, a kind of pricing power who can decide. So, and it's a momentum. 3-4 years ago, it was really easy to get debt fund for startup. Today, it's much more difficult. Or if you are doing artificial intelligence, yes, it's a new way to get a lot of money. 3 months ago, I was at a conference about biodiversity, and people were fighting, trying to raise money for a biodiversity fund, and it was impossible. But if you can just get some exposure to ChatGPT, you have billions coming as a fund manager. So that's life. So my recommendation will be very easy. Try to find a good relationship and good agreement, and having an alignment between investors' expectations and what the company can deliver. So the good alignment is just being sure about what is the market potential, what is the timeline, what could be the next funding needed if you miss your business plan, if you have 6 months delay, the same, not being short of cash. So yeah, I'm optimistic by if you like the product, if you really go for the good reason to the company, to support the company, you should be able to find some compromise on the mix between debt, equity, index debt, and I think it was your question, on both sides, just decide what can be acceptable or not, and in this case, manage some reduction clauses. If you are an investor and the company, the funders miss the target, you can get a reduction for the same money. You don't invest more, but you take control or more control. And on the other side, as a funder in a startup, if you have to give 20, 40% or even 50% of the company, but if you manage it well, try to get reduction on your side to get it back.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm now going to move on to the next question, and it's a question for Tanja on academia. Obviously, academia plays an active role in promoting and teaching social entrepreneurship, sustainability, impact entrepreneurship in today's economy. So what do you think are the steps to enhance youth education and incentivize the creation of impact startups and sustainable businesses? And this is my first question. And the second is, there are many key factors involved in the success of a young impact startup, as we are discussing now. And we know that receiving consulting and mentoring and accessing funds is key. What would you say are the additional elements that a startup needs to become successful?
Okay, I'll start from the last one, because then I think I can tie into what I think universities or even high schools, elementary schools can do. Is not just about academia. You should start well before that, because one thing that I think entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs or sustainable business leaders need is knowledge. Put it simply, I think you need to really know the market. You really need to know the solutions that are already available, what works and does not work with them. You need to know what problem you're trying to solve and make sure that it is a problem that your target beneficiaries actually want solved and not what you think they want. And all of these kind of calls for gathering knowledge on a lot of different things, knowing your job well and what you're trying to do well. And that's what universities can help with first and foremost, as well as schools. Like providing knowledge on many different fronts is not just about entrepreneurship or business. It is about nature, it is about climate, it is about the social issues, it is about anything that's already going on from a technical perspective, AI, computer science. So I think that's kind of role number one. Other thing that I think a lot of social entrepreneurs need, based on what I hear, is peer support, because it's a very tough journey. It's really challenging. You're gonna get a lot of no's, you're gonna get a lot of failures, and knowing what others are going through can be really helpful from a mental health perspective, which is equally important. And so I think what universities and other educational institutions can do is to connect peers. So create those kind of accelerator programs or incubators where not only individuals can access the expert advice, but also can access peers first and foremost to share challenges and to also know about solutions. I would say sometimes universities can provide funds, but that's not really the case in most cases, and especially now where there's a crunch in funding in a lot of sectors, at least unless you're in AI. I think that's where all the money is going at the moment. But that could be something that can also be thought about. One thing that I think works really well is to expose people to problems. And I've seen some UK schools that children are being asked to become little entrepreneurs and to support the schools into creating some beehives and then the honey out of those beehives, or set up a vegetables garden so that those vegetables can improve their own food for the canteen of the school, or be sold to the local population so they get better nutrition. So I think this kind of project can be done in school, and at universities what can be done well is to, for example, engage students in projects with the community where they have to use, I don't know, design thinking or systems thinking or other tools to help a community solve a problem it is feeling, and really learn what it takes to get to know the community, to build that trust. And I think these are kind of labs that then in real life can really help when those students get to do something for real rather than just in a protected environment, which is what we can provide.
Great, thank you very much, Tanja. Anyone else wants to add how academia can support impact startups? You're all good? Yeah? Okay. I'm going now to move on to a question for Sebastiano and Freddy. As founders and CEOs of successful companies like New Roots and Querciabella that produce high-quality organic plant-based products, what do you think is necessary to bring about a systemic change towards responsible consumption and production in the agri-food industry, and what role does culture play in this? I will start with Freddy.
I think the main problem in today's society is that actually people or businesses, they don't really know their own purpose. So if you ask a person, why are you on this planet, they will tell you, I don't know. No, most of people cannot really answer this question, and same goes for businesses. If you ask a business or a person working in a business, what's your purpose? They will say, yeah, I produce papers, or I sell this stuff. You know, I think it's very important to connect the dots, and I think it's very important to understand, or true essence. I think business needs to understand what's their true mission, and what are they trying to solve. And this is constantly evolving, constantly changing. And secondly, I think it's very important that we have disrupting technologies. I think the little things are very important, the little rituals, as I mentioned before. But I think we need disruptive technologies which will make the world better. I don't think marketing or sales will make the difference. In the long term, yes, but in the short term, yes, but in the long term, it will be taste, it will be texture, it will be trust, transparency, and I think it's very important that we start to do business with more integrity and more sense of doing things the right way. I think that's what's necessary.
Thank you for your answer. Sebastiano?
I think there are different ways to look at your question. I mean, the formula of doing things properly from an ethical standpoint and sustainability standpoint does not necessarily translate into economic success. As we know, the world is mostly run by profit-driven ideologies and ways of production, and it is very much so in the food sector as well. What we can do, companies like Freddy's and like New Roots and Querciabella can do, is serve as an example where you can excel in your product category and set an example because you are doing things properly, but at the same time you achieve good results. So our winery, as immodest as it sounds, and I apologize, but having made, being completely organic and very rigid about every phase of production, and gaining, an award like we did for Best Italian Wine, or recently we were for the second time listed among the 100 best wines in the world. That serves as an example. It shows that you can do things properly and at the same time produce products of excellence. And This goes back to what we were debating before, where I think we agree, but you don't know. No, which is no. But what I mean is that people will always choose what they like, and so some of the most successful food brands in the world produce garbage, if you want, but it's very successful because people like it. If you can marry, something that people like because of the taste and the pleasure with something that is sustainable and ethically viable as well, then you have success. That's a formula that I think, and again, it doesn't necessarily translate into economic success. Of course, you can make more money if you produce cheaper products that are not good for people's health. There's no question about that. But serving as a positive example, I think, is very good. And again, I'm going to go to Freddy for an example of a company that I think is phenomenal, because when you are replacing an entire category like they are, and you put a product on the table that tastes as good or better than what you're replacing, that's a winning point. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you're aware of the whole controversy about Climax Foods that was going to win the award for best cheese, but it was plant-based, so they were removed from the competition, and this and that. But it's very interesting. But I think it is key to win the hearts of consumers. And then, of course, there are millions of complications, and probably too long a conversation for here. But the private labels that all supermarket chains create now, as soon as they identify an interesting product, they make their own version that is cheaper, brand it themselves, and replace everything that other people have put a lot of effort into creating. So that's an added complication. But
thank you very much, Sebastiano, for your contribution. I am now, in the interest of time, going to quickly open the floor to questions from the audience. I don't know if there are any questions. We have a mic somewhere. Yeah. Any questions for our panelists today? Yes, over here, Daman.
Do you think that pricing externalities in the value chain would change dramatically the terms of trade and help the surge of sustainable products and services? And if yes, how can it be done? Politically?
Who wants to go first?
Very good question, and the system is rigged, as we know. The largest companies receive public subsidies for the wrong reasons and use them to perpetuate their model, which is wrong. And the big number one example in the world is the meat and dairy industry, which receives $500 billion a year of public funding. That, of course, is used to manipulate prices and of course, to perpetuate a system that is wrong. So definitely politics plays a role. I am not too optimistic because politicians are corrupt by nature, so they will always go in the wrong direction. And by the way, I'm glad that you were showing the poster of Food for Profit, this documentary that just came out. I don't know if you saw it, but if you have not seen it yet, you should. But the problem is, all over the world, public subsidies go to the wrong companies that are not only unsustainable, but are dishonest with consumers. And that's price manipulation, because if you produce a bad product that destroys the environment, pollutes, and destroys people's health, and you get public funding for it so you can sell it at a cheaper price, of course that's bad. So moving towards reducing public funding towards bad productions definitely can switch things in the right direction. And just to put numbers where they should be, if for instance, meat did not receive public funding as much as it does, the prices would be so much higher then people would really start buying alternatives to meat because they would be immensely cheaper and not only healthier and better for the world. And that's just one example.
I think, I completely agree. I would add that another thing that's going on at the moment to adjust the pricing is attempts to lobby for changes in accounting so that the true cost of all factors of production is included in the balance sheets, because at the moment there's a lot that doesn't enter the balance sheets, what we call externalities that are not necessarily externalities of what's going on. And there's some changes that are happening, so we're already one step closer with some companies starting to disclose in the notes at the end of the balance sheet what they think their true cost of some or true impact is. But I know there's a lot of accountants and a lot of lobbying going in place to try and adjust the balance sheets, because I think that together with policy and correct pricing could help, because I think it is a key component. And for example, if you think about transports, we all should try and use more trains, but people keep going for planes. And why do they? Because planes are cheaper, and they're not cheaper because they are cheaper. They are cheaper because of all the subsidies that are going on and advantages that are being given. So I think part of it is policy, but we also need international policy for that kind of stuff, which is even harder. And also accounting, I think, can play a huge role, because once you start changing the balance sheets, that changes investors as well. So that could have a huge ripple effect.
By IFRS standards or other standards as well?
No, I think there's definitely some people there that are working towards it, but as far as I know, standards are not really that. It's more groups of accountants. For example, in the UK, there's some networks that are working towards it and are also doing partnerships with some parts of the UN to try and do that.
You have a fight between US and Europe on this topic with single or double materiality, and it's a big issue, of course. I would just add on your question on subsidize is more about what the public money is for, and I really would like to see more than subsidize. It's public funding able to finance and to help and giving financing to companies trying to change and to improve. And when you ask about the value chain, I do think now that on the value chain, it's really perhaps larger companies or companies on the value chain able to identify good companies doing good business, and instead of competing or trying to put them down, perhaps to work together and to converge their business. So I don't know if you can work with larger cheesemaker or not, because they don't have your technology to do vegan cheese. But as I told you, I don't believe anymore in the consumers. Consumers, they like McDonald's and they pay for McDonald's. But working on the value chain with strong and good partnership could be a solution.
Well, I think we can win the hearts of consumer by really, getting towards them with emotions, and food is emotion, but we need to get back towards this system where we value transparency, where we value quality, and this has a price, obviously. But I truly believe in the customer. Not all of them, but you see it in the organic sector. It's a small sector, but these people exist, and we need to somehow move the needle towards a more global view, and make sure we have really wow products, that are cheaper, better for the planet, better for the animals, and that's how we're gonna really make a difference, I guess.
It's a point, I agree. You have the convinced consumer, but they are 5-10%. On the mass market, you have to go to the concerned consumers, and concerned consumers are very volatile, and they can change very quickly if there is an event or if it's just more expensive.
Yeah, and I agree with you there. Everybody's egoistic at the end of the day somehow.
It's my fight for 15 years now.
Okay, so we have to agree.
Okay, thank you for your answers. Are there any other questions from the audience for the panelists? Yes.
Thank you. This goes to the impact investors. What are the biggest challenges that you face when you measure or try to measure the impact of your investments?
Measuring impact.
Well, there are several ways to measure the impact of your investment, of course, and but there are very simple numbers out there that can show you the way. And Samantha's presentation before just ran through the key numbers. And one thing that I know for sure based on numbers is that if you invest to move away from the use of animals, you are already having an enormous impact because of land use, water use, emissions, and many, many other factors, including human exploitation. So as a general rule to measure impact, I think you start from the general direction, and that is one. And then, of course, you need to analyze in detail everything else that is being done by the companies you invest in. But there are general rules that allow you to have greater impact just from the get-go, even without knowing exactly what the company does.
How much wine did you sell last year? In bottles, how much did you mention?
I didn't mention, but it's about 500,000
Yeah,
bottles.
exactly. I think that's a good indicator, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a big volume.
Can I
Yes,
add an
please,
answer?
Aymeric, please go ahead.
Because most of the impact investors will tell you that what we are missing is data. We don't have the data on impact investing companies. Sometimes they are small companies and they don't have the data, or they don't have the time to provide the data, where large companies, they have sustainable manager providing the data. My approach was a little bit different. I totally agree with you. It's where we want to lead the company. So I moved from impact measurement to impact management. We defined strong targets, which is the regenerative economy, with what has a business you are doing, has collaborative, has local, has circular. And what we are doing, it's not asking or imposing the data to the company. We have the KPI and we choose with the company which data to bring to this KPI to make it strategic and to make it together as a target good for the company, and not just a data to report that you keep aside or you just show when there is some greenwashing to do.
Excellent. Thank you so much for all your answers. I think that we have to wrap up. I don't know if there is, maybe I'll take one last question, if there is one. Otherwise, we are going to move on and close the panel. I would like to thank you very much. Thank you to all the panelists for a very insightful and valuable discussion on sustainable agri-food and also human rights. Please give a round of applause to our panelists. Thank you.